Good morning on this snowy 27th day of January 2021. I am Betty Boucher, the Islesboro Community Center Winter Program Chair, and delighted to introduce our guest, Kathi Langelier. Kathi has ties to the island and having done a lot of gardening and a lot of friends on the island, and is now the founder and formulator of Herbal Revolutions, which she sells products and ranging from salves and tinctures to teas and shrubs and tonics, and they're available throughout this state. And something that's really cool is in 2019 received an award for the best home-based business in Maine and all of New England, and from the Small Business Administration. So that's pretty cool. Yay. And then most recently has just published a book, Herbal Revolutions. And I absolutely love this book. And but today she will be sharing information on how to stay healthy in a long winter and boost our immune system with items that we can concoct in our kitchen. So this video or this Zoom call will be recorded. So if anybody wants to watch it at a later time, it will be available on the community center link. And if you are on this call, on the Zoom call, we ask that you just mute your button during the presentation, and then Kathi will be able to answer questions at the end of her presentation. So without further ado, again, thank you, Kathi, for joining us, and go.
Great. Thanks, Betty, and thanks, Sarah. So as Betty mentioned, I used to live on the island. I thought I'd give a little background. I've been working and studying plant-based medicine for over 25 years now, and I've been farming and gardening for just as long. And I don't know, a long time ago, I landed on the island, and it's a really special place. So for those of you that remember me, hi, I miss you all. And I miss the island dearly. I gardened out there for over 10 years and lived out there for a good chunk of time as well. And I actually started the business while I was out there gardening. And while I was out there, there's a lot of magic and there's a lot of wild, beautiful plants on that island. And I spent a lot of my years out there getting familiar with the plants there. So there's a lot to work with, but obviously there's a lot we can do with our own gardens, and there's a lot we can do in our kitchens. And that is the focus of what we're going to talk about. But yeah, real quick, 25 years of doing this. And I started Herbal Revolution about 10 years ago, 11 years ago now. And for 4 of those years, I was hustling and working many other jobs until I was able to get Herbal Revolution off the ground and able to do that full time. And now I have an incredible team of 7 people, and we're about to grow to be probably about 11 people team, 12 people team. I have a farm in Union and a facility down the road from our farm where we make all the products. And on the property where we make all the products, we are going to be expanding this year and creating gardens where the gardens are going to be open to the public, and we're going to create a trail system. And all of the plants that are grown on that space are going to be used for donation purposes with local organizations. And then we also donate when there's a call to action, like when the protests were happening and people on the ground needed support, or when there's horrible events, unfortunately, that happened, there's often a call to action for some herbal support for the people involved or for the on-the-ground medics. So we are expanding that part and eventually going to turn that into a nonprofit so that people can donate, especially once we're able to get out of COVID and able to interact a little bit more. We'll be able to offer volunteer work and teach people how to make these medicines. So a lot of exciting things, along with a cafe and retail down the line for us. But as Betty mentioned, the most recent big thing was writing this book, which was a lot of work and fun. And so today I'm going to share with you some recipes in the book and then just some other recipes that I have that I wanted to share that I think will be useful. So things that we can do that are obviously just really basic. You know, when it comes to our health, there's so many things that we need to factor in. And I think that staying hydrated is one of those things that we can easily forget. So especially in the wintertime, we're cold, it's harder maybe to drink water. It's just one of those things that can easily slip our minds. So I can't stress enough how important it is to stay hydrated and to drink water or warm, you know, at least like room temperature water or teas throughout the day. Adequate amount of sleep. This is something that's always important, no matter what time of the year, to definitely try our best to get good sleep. And some of the best ways of doing that are having a routine and staying consistent with a schedule. Daily movement. Again, this time of year is not as easy as the summertime, but if you can at all possibly get out and do some form of movement, and it doesn't matter what that looks like. It can be a slow walk, it can be some gentle stretches, but some sort of movement, because that's what gets our lymphatic system activated and it helps support our immune system as well, not to mention our joints and muscles. It's just all around great for our body. And then eating nourishing foods. In the winter time, it's one of those things, you know, we have this amazing abundance in the summertime, but it gets a little bit harder to eat a rainbow of veggies and fruits in the winter time. But trying to get like at least some brilliant colors, like our winter squashes and our carrots, our root vegetables, really supportive, really great, healthy fats. People forget that fat is an important thing, but healthy fats like olive oil, coconut oils are really beneficial for our joints, for our immune system, grains, and ideally, if possible, sorry, I have a new puppy, and so I apologize, but I may have to just check on him and make sure he doesn't have certain things in his mouth throughout this. Yeah, he's good. So having like eating foods that are not, that are organic are really going to be beneficial. If they have been sprayed with pesticides, it just adds that much more for our body to have to do and our like processing that. So when possible, do that. Same with ethically raised meats, really important. So stress management. How do we handle our stress? And right now we're in a time where things are so stressful. This is such a bizarre time that we're in. We're living through a pandemic. There was a lot of political chaos and just chaos all around. So we're in this sort of extra stressful space. So what I'm asking people is to like stop and think about what makes you feel good. What is that little happy place? Where's that place to you? Sometimes it would be people going to classes or going and dancing, and it's harder to do, but are there ways for you to do that within your own space, in your home, or potentially outside in a socially distanced place, just so you're able to feed those parts of you, because it's really easy right now for people to feel isolated. So getting outside, even if it's cold out, even if it's just for 5 minutes, can sometimes help recenter us. but you know yourself best, and you know what works for you and helping ground you and get centered. So things to think about, because when we're stressed and when we're angry, it truly does decrease our immune system. It causes us to have blood pressure rise. And it just throws the whole thing off, because the thing of it is that everything's connected. We're talking about supporting our immune system and what we can do for our immune, but really it's also what are we doing for our nervous system, our lymphatic system, our digestive system. It's all connected. So if our nervous system is out of whack, our digestive system might be out of whack, and that's also affecting our immune system. So whatever you can do to help reduce your stress. I know something that I have tried for the first time is these online meditation apps. I'm somebody that has a hard time sitting still. And so I've been doing more of the guided meditations, and I found those to be really beneficial for me, because it just works better for me than to just sit in silence. But, you know, or yoga. Now that I have a dog, it's even harder. I can't do anything right now. So getting outside for walks has been helpful for me. So whatever works for you in your lifestyle. So foods and nutrients, obviously food is super important. I think sometimes, you know, food is delicious. I love food. So many people love food. And I think of food as like, I love the way this makes me feel and the way it tastes. But to also look at food as this is nurturing us. I am putting fuel into my body so that it can keep going, so that my brain is going to function and all of my parts are going to work properly. And not that you need to think about that all the time, but if you just stop and think about all the necessary things, our bodies are friggin' amazing. And it takes a lot, but they're super resilient. But nonetheless, it's good to know that we're eating food to sustain ourselves and to sustain this system, this collective system. So here's just sort of a breakdown of certain vitamins and minerals that you can find with different foods, because these are all play a role in our immune system. And zinc, as we've been hearing a lot lately with COVID, is an important one for us to be, to be considering as preventative care. I mean, and I don't want to say that like, if you take zinc, yes, you know, you're going to not get COVID. I want to be clear on that. But there are certain things that, you know, they're showing that are beneficial. So things like you can take zinc supplements, or you can find them in oysters and hemp seeds and pumpkin seeds and oatmeal and lentils. So these are really important things. And you can just you'll all have a copy of this slide, so I won't go through all of this, but you can sort of see how this all breaks down in the different foods that correlate with the different vitamins and minerals. So we're gonna just jump right into some of our delicious foods that we love. Garlic, I love garlic. I love growing garlic. This is a crop that I grow regularly, and we use it in our products, and we sell it for seed, not usually at the Common Ground Fair. And maybe we'll start next year selling it just to the general public. But it's antibacterial, it's anti-inflammatory, antiviral, and it's an expectorant. And it's beneficial for the lungs and excessive dampness, because it's warming and it's drying. It goes really well with, some of the uses. There's so many uses for garlic, right? Like it's endless. But I personally love having a ginger garlic thyme tea with some honey, especially if I'm starting to feel my throat starting to get a little tickly. I usually go straight for that. I'm in love with this Lebanese garlic paste. It is so delicious. It's, I don't know if it's pronounced tome, but you take a cup of raw garlic and then a half a cup of lemon juice and 3 cups of olive oil. And you put it in a food processor, and you need to, slowly drizzle in the olive oil so that it starts to emulsify. And once it does, then you can slowly alternate between the lemon juice and the olive oil. And it makes this delicious, buttery yumminess. It's so good. You know, your family may, you know, if you're all eating it, you don't mind, you know, I'm always smelling like garlic. People are always like, God, you stink like garlic. Maybe all of you that remember me from the island remember that I smell like garlic all the time. But this is just a delicious meal. And I use this in replacement of mayo. I put it kind of on everything. So this is a great way of utilizing garlic, still in a very medicinal but delicious way. And you've got those great fats, and lemon, which is so good for us. So I also love making honeys, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And garlic honey is a delicious one.
I had a question. A question, Kathi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you heard the term garlic is Russian penicillin?
Yeah. That makes sense.
I have to keep putting my mask on because it's physical therapy at the ICC. So pardon me, but
no. I figured you must be in work.
I am. And so I really like keeping that in my head because I really think that the more that we transfer that information of plants being the medicinal component, and I really loved hearing that it's Russian penicillin. I try to cook with garlic nightly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really like that you're highlighting garlic. Thank you.
Garlic is one of those things that, you know, I think that we forget that like food is medicine and medicine is food, and that connection. And this is what our ancestors used a lot. And, you know, going, you know, to the point of like that Russian penicillin, you know, this is what people used in their lives. And it's amazing what we have and how far we've come with medicine in our day and age. But I think in the process, we've lost some of that connection with just what we have around us and what we have for food. So yeah, garlic is just an amazing one. And I do recommend eating it every day if you can. All right, come on, babe. Come on. This is why I'm having a hard time. This is the little creature that's causing me to come outside. Sorry. This is Utah. Come on, buddy.
Well, you're just modeling that 30 to 60 minutes of physical activity a day for us live.
Yes, no. Come on, inside, honey.
Welcome, Cher.
Hi, Cher. So garlic in everything. I can't say enough about garlic, and it's easy to grow. I know that there's a lot of resources probably for people on the islands for growing garlic, but we plant it in the fall, and I plant the largest bulbs. And, you know, they say garlic seed, but really it's just a bulb. That's all. And it's a big bulb that's nice and healthy. Utah, I want you to just sit, please. And you plant it in the fall and cover it with some straw or hay, and just wait for it to come up and harvest it in probably around July. Once the bottom 2 leaves start to brown is about when it's ready to harvest. Such a satisfying plant to grow. I find onions to also be a satisfying plant to grow. Onions are another amazing medicine. Onions are full of sulfur, along with garlic is high in sulfur, and it can help break up the congestion in our lungs. Onions are anti-inflammatory, and they're a great expectorant. And this is something that people don't use much anymore, but an onion poultice on the chest, if you're having some serious congestion, this works really, really well. I've also tried it on my feet, but I would start first with your chest. And so what you would do is you would just get some onions and you would saute them up a little bit, just a few minutes just to get them soft. And you could add, if you don't have cornmeal or anything to make into a paste, that's fine. But if you do, creating it into a paste is really helpful. But then you put it on a towel, and then you put that towel onto your chest. And if you have a heating pad, you can put a heating pad over that, and then just let it stay there for at least 15 to 20 minutes. And it's pretty powerful stuff. It can really help break things up and allow the airways to open up again. So this is a fantastic thing. But again, eating onions, having onions in our diet regularly is incredibly beneficial to our immune system. I love putting onions in everything. So anytime you can add this to your meals, to your daily diet, go for it. Ginger. Ginger is another incredible plant. This is some beautiful Maine grown ginger. This farm is, I don't believe, any longer. I think it's Black Fox Farm, but I used to get ginger from them years ago, and my gosh, stunning stuff. So ginger is an incredible anti-inflammatory, as we know, and it's also an expectorant and it's antibacterial. And I love using ginger all throughout this season, the cold season. It really can help get damp cold out of us. It's warming, it's drying. So if you have, again, like a lot of a wet cough, this is a really great one to use with the ginger and the onions. And I put it in food. Basically, ginger, again, just add it to your food. You're going to get these benefits. You don't need to have some fancy preparation for any of these things that we're talking about. You can literally just add them to your diet, and they are going to work in a beneficial way. So I love eating it. I haven't done this in a while, but I would take turmeric and ginger and dice it up. And then I would put it into a little saute pan with some olive oil and just saute it till they started to get a little crispy. And I would just snack on that, or I would sprinkle it on salads or basically anything. And it's super tasty. And one thing I'll say about turmeric, I don't have a slide for turmeric, but turmeric is another incredible plant. It's not as easily available, I think, as ginger, even though you can find it in natural food stores. But again, it's a food that it's a plant that is better used as a food than, say, as a supplement. It's really hard for our bodies to absorb turmeric from supplements. It's often just a single constituent, the curcumin, which they isolate, and which is fine, but it's going to do better if it has all of the constituents left with it, like basically whole medicine. And it makes it more bioavailable for our bodies to assimilate and to access. So any chance you have to eat the turmeric, that is going to be more beneficial than taking it in a supplement form. And when you take it with, yeah.
What does bioavailable mean?
Sorry, you know what? I almost was like, I should explain that. It means that like our bodies are accessing it easier. Where if we're taking it in a capsule, it first has to go through our entire digestive system. Our digestive system then has to break that capsule down. And then where is it left? Is it going to be sent to a part of our body that is not even absorbing the what's left over? Where when you're eating something, it's immediately the breaking down of that food starts immediately, and our body is already utilizing and accessing the benefits of that food. Does that make sense? So it's more available basically for our bodies to absorb, as opposed to certain supplements. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, and the other thing too with ginger and turmeric is there's plants that work synergistically together. And again, like some plants facilitate the body to absorb more or easier. And ginger and or black pepper are synergistic plants that work with turmeric that make it easier for our bodies to absorb the benefits of the turmeric. I also love fresh ginger tea. If you've never tried fresh ginger tea, all right, try this. Like, oh, it's so good. I don't have measurements because writing the book was the hardest thing, because whatever I have on hand, I utilize, and I just sort of put it in and do eyeball stuff. So I would grate some ginger into a saucepan, and I would then like simmer it, get it so the color changes and it feels and tastes gingery. And then strain that and add a little, I'm trying to think if there's something else I add to this, but a little bit of maple syrup. And that is divine. Fresh ginger tea with a little Maine maple syrup. It's so good. So I highly recommend that. Also honey ginger. Can't say enough about eating honey and ginger together. Yeah, Betty.
I have a question. Going back to the garlic, is there a difference between the soft neck and the hard neck garlic? That which you harvest in the fall? There isn't.
Yeah.
It's just a
and the harvest is the same.
issue.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. It's just the storage. I rarely grow soft neck. I honestly can't think of the last time I grew soft neck, but it is for storage.
Mm-hmm.
I've known people have told me they have successfully, and I think it was still hard neck, but they've successfully planted in the spring. I have tried this multiple times with the garlic these people have told me to use, and I've had no success. Maybe a healthy raised garden. I don't know, but yeah, I always do it in the fall.
I had a question too about the garlic and onion real quick. Are those also medicinal for asthma?
I'm going to say yes, because they're antispasmodic and anti-inflammatory. What I probably would do is put something that's a little bit more antispasmodic with it. And I'm trying to think of like mullein is antispasmodic. I would probably pair it with an herb that had maybe even passion flower, something that is a relaxant, and it is so that you don't have that when people go into an asthma attack, that constrictiveness and that tightness. Having an herb like passion flower to relax those muscles and relax the nervous system, and then having the anti-inflammatory effects of the onions and garlic and ginger would be beneficial.
Thank you.
You guys. All right. Rosemary. Rosemary is another incredible plant that we have everywhere. It grows, we grow it outside. Most people have it in their house. Most people have it in their kitchen. This is antibacterial, anti-inflammatory. It's warming, it's drying. This is really great for upper respiratory issues. This one's a good one for a wheezing asthma. So I'm assuming that's a wetter situation, so it can help dry things out. I love using rosemary in all my cooking when I can. It's a fabulous flavor. I feel like it's very stimulating to us mentally. It has a great cerebral effect. I think it is a great cerebral brain tonic. But for winter things, I love doing honeys with it, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. It goes well with white pine and lemon and ginger. Eating it in any way you can. Sinus infections. A lot of these things that we're talking about, back when there was the plague, a lot of these herbs were being used, and the thieves, people that lived through the plague, those people that lived had a lot of garlic, onions, they wore thyme and rosemary. These are the herbs that were used to help combat the plague. So they're very powerful plants that we forget. We sort of are like, oh, rosemary, it's so tasty. It is so tasty, but it's also a really amazing, powerful medicinal. Thyme, as I just mentioned, it's a really great one. It's antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, antiviral, and it's another expectorant. So a lot of these herbs that we're talking about are really good for heavy wet chests, like upper respiratory. So not as much dry. So if you have a dry chronic cough, these herbs are going to aggravate that, if that makes sense. This is more for you've got phlegm, you've got stuff, you want to get it out. These are really, all of these things we've talked about are really great for that. A delicious tea, thyme, lemon, and ginger, so good with some honey. A honey thyme, delicious. I got really into, I love nuts, and I started roasting some almonds with thyme and rosemary. That is a delicious snack. And then of course, just adding it into your food in any way you can, in any way you enjoy, you're gonna get the benefits of it. Really easy plant to grow. You can start it from seed or get plugs, and it's hardy. It withstands, our main winters really well. So here's some recipes using some of these ingredients. Utah, come here. Come. Sorry, he's eating things he shouldn't again. Come. So fire cider. So fire cider is an incredible, I love fire cider for so many reasons. This is an incredible kitchen remedy. When I started learning about herbs, I was a teenager, but it wasn't until I was probably 19 or 20 and I started working on farms. And a lot of the farmers here in Maine, especially back then, they'd never call themselves herbalists, but boy, were they herbalists. And they taught me so much. And that's where I learned to make fire cider. And it was from a farm that I worked on, because we grew all of these things on the farm. And so most people have these ingredients in their pantry. And as an introduction to herbal medicine, I love this recipe and I love this product for that reason. I think it's a wonderful introductory to the food as medicine concept and using plant-based medicine, because it's just really easy to access and make. So horseradish, if any of you have ever had wasabi, that is made with horseradish. And so if you've had it, you know that will clean out your sinus passage like that. It's a wild experience. So this is fantastic for congestion and upper respiratory head colds. It's also beneficial for allergies. I've known people that have used it who have allergies and it's been beneficial, and it might be also beneficial for asthma. Horseradish is also anti-inflammatory. So you're going to mix, and we've talked about the ginger and the other things. Now, we haven't really talked about hot peppers much, but cayenne or any of the capsicums, hot peppers are wonderful for our immune system. They're wonderful for heating our bodies and for keeping our circulation moving. So hot peppers, if you can tolerate them, are a wonderful addition to some of these winter remedies. So this I make in a 1/2 gallon mason jar. And you can grate the fresh horseradish. If you're going to grate it, either by hand or with a food processor, just be so conscious. This is a challenging plant to work with if you've never worked with it before. It will cause you to cry. It will sting and it will burn your eyes, and even if you breathe it in, it can burn your throat. So just be conscious of when you're working with the horseradish. And then, so I like to grate that, and then I will grate some ginger, and then I'll chop up. I usually will just chop up the red onion. If I'm doing a small batch, I tend to just do all this by hand and not use the food processor, but a food processor works great. So I'll chop that up, and then I'll add in the garlic, and I'll do 5 to 10. I leave this up to people. I love garlic, so I'll put in a whole bunch of it. But if garlic is like, some people, it can really aggravate their digestive systems. So use what you feel is appropriate. And then any hot pepper works. I grow habaneros here on the farm. So because I grow the habaneros, I use habaneros, but you might be able to find jalapenos, or, right now you might find cayenne or habanero powder. It's a little harder in the winter time, but if you're making it in the summertime, like in the fall, is a really great time to make this so that it's ready for the winter. And then you have more access to the fresh jalapenos, which make a delicious blend. And then there's options, right? You can there's endless options of what you can put in this. I love putting in turmeric, rosemary, and thyme for the reasons that we just talked about. We just talked about rosemary and thyme as being really great for the upper respiratory, and they're anti-inflammatory and antibacterial and antiviral. So I use them almost always when I make a fire cider. I also like to use turmeric for its anti-inflammatory properties, and it works again really well with ginger. And then the addition of oranges and lemons. I always put a lemon in mine. I love the color. I love the way it tastes. I have one that it's hard to see, but yeah, it's because it's been sitting for so long. But the lemon, when you first make it, it's so colorful, and you have all the different colors, and it looks beautiful. And that yellow in there just adds all to the visual appeal to the formula. So lemons are great. if you have access to that. And oranges bring this really delicious citrus flavor. I tend to not put oranges in mine, but I'll show you how I do work with oranges with it. So you will put this all in a jar, cover it, you know, add your vinegar, add honey if you want to have honey in it. If you don't want to have honey, don't add honey, and let it sit for a minimum of 4 weeks. The longer you let it sit though, the yummier it's going to get. And then you can strain it, or I've just been like leaving it in here and I'm just sipping off of it with all the stuff in it. So multiple ways of doing things there. So uses for fire cider, endless, they are endless. And here's one of them. This is one that's in our book, and it's called Rise and Shine. And what I do is I take a tablespoon of the fire cider, and then I take basically a wedge of orange, and I just squeeze that. I put a little bit of honey and a little bit of water, and I blend it all together, and it's a tasty drink. It's invigorating. Fire cider is really invigorating. It's wonderful for the circulation. You know, it's great for the upper respiratory, but I love it for invigorating me and waking me up. So that's one way I really like to use it. It's also great as a salad dressing. I make all my own salad dressings. And so I use the fire cider as the vinegar portion of the salad dressing. I also love making soups, especially this time of year. And again, there's something about vinegar that really brings out, it helps balance things and it helps bring out flavors. And so I will add this to my soup as well, or it's delicious with roasted vegetables. Oh, a sheet of roasted vegetables, and then you roast them and then you sprinkle some of this on. It is delicious. Goes great with baked beans if you're making baked beans. I mean, it's kind of endless. Like basically wherever you would use a vinegar, you could add the fire cider as the vinegar for that recipe, especially if it's a savory recipe, because it has all those delicious flavors in it. So really fun way. Like, again, this really goes to like the things that you can do with your food that can be really beneficial for you in so many ways. So herbal honeys, so good. I'm a big fan of herbal honeys. Honey is really fabulous. You know, it's one of those things where we don't want to be consuming a lot of sugars because they can decrease our immune system. But it's like having that balance, right? And I do really love honey on a medicinal level. And it's super tasty, it's sweet. So it has antiviral properties. It's antibacterial. I use it a lot on wounds. This is my first aid for topical use for those reasons, for its antibacterial and antiviral properties. When I get cut or if I have a burn, especially a burn, I go straight to my honey and I slather it on. And I wait until some of the heat starts to dissipate because the honey will help pull it out. But it's a wonderful healing. It's wonderful for being used in that way. But I love it for internal use. It's a demulcent, which means it's soothing to our tissue. It's soothing to that respiratory tissue that has been aggravated from the cold, the dry air, from coughing too much. So it's really wonderful if you have a sore throat or if you have going to that hot, dry cough where you're so sore. The honey can be really soothing. So what you can do with honey though is be really playful, and you can add herbs and vegetables. You can add things to it and make these infused herbs. And so this list here are just a few of the things that, you know, I mean, it's kind of endless what you could do with herbal honeys. But, you know, here's just a list of some plants that you can add to it. I tend to use, it's fine to use dried. You know, definitely you can use dried all year round, which makes it really accessible. If you want to keep it raw, then you just put it in a jar, and we'll talk about this in the next recipe. But you can just put it in a jar and cover it with the honey and let it sit. Or if you want something a little sooner and you don't care if the honey is raw or not, you can heat it up, but truly raw honey is where most of the medicine is. So I do recommend the non-heated. If you're going to use it for medicinal purposes, I recommend using the honey, getting a raw honey, and doing it the way that this next recipe is going to show you. So this is a hay honey. This is from the book as well. And what we have here is layers, and you can kind of see the layers in the picture of red onion, garlic, ginger, hyssop. And hyssop is a medicinal plant, and hyssop can get confused with anise hyssop. Anise hyssop is an agastache. It's a very different plant than hyssop. Hyssop is, and that's its Latin name, Hyssopus officinalis. And it's a Mediterranean plant. It grows somewhat similar to rosemary and lavender, but I would say it's hardy, much, much hardier than both of them. And it grows incredibly well here in our state, where lavender is a little finicky, and maybe lavender is not very finicky on the island, but here where I am, it's a little more finicky. And rosemary obviously doesn't work year round, at least not where I'm at. So hyssop is just a nice, solid year round. It's an incredible plant for the pollinators. The pollinators love it. And so it makes a great border. So I use hyssop because hyssop is an antiviral, it's antibacterial, and it's wonderful for when you're starting to get that tickle in the back of your throat, like you feel like something's coming on. Hyssop is a really good plant to go to for when that starts to happen. So I love it just for all around upper respiratory. So what I do is I will take all my ingredients, I'll get a jar, whatever size. Here it's like a jam size jar. And I will then, start layering the ingredients in. And what I'll do is I'll start off with like lemon, and I'll put like a slice of lemon, and I'll have that cover the first layer, and then I'll drizzle some honey over that lemon. And once the lemon is covered, I'll put the next layer of like maybe ginger, and then I'll cover that layer of ginger with honey. And then I'll layer in the garlic, and then I'll layer in the honey. And so it's just I'm alternating between the ingredients and honey, ingredients and honey, ingredients and honey, until the jar is filled. And then I cover it. And you want to cover the whole thing, you know, have it all covered in honey. And, oh, sorry, my dog's eating a plant. Utah, drop honey. And then you want to cover it up. And the best is to let this sit for a couple weeks if you can. So again, you can make this now. And I mean, I always start eating it sooner because I can never wait, but you want to, if you can, let it sit. The longer it sits, the more yummy and amazing it gets. And you can do this again with so many things. Like back to this picture right here. This is, I love making this honey. This is a white pine, lemon, rosemary honey. This is so good. You know, I don't talk about white pine so much in this presentation, but why not? We have white pine trees everywhere, and they're such a beautiful medicine. I use the pine needles for making into tea. I make them into infused vinegars. I make them into infused honeys. It's wonderful for the upper respiratory, a great expectorant, and it's high in vitamin C. So it's a wonderful medicine, and flavor-wise, it pairs really well with rosemary and lemon. So this honey, the white pine lemon rosemary honey, is delicious. And again, I just do a layering system. I'll put the lemon in, and then I'll put the rosemary and the pine on top of it. And if there's still room, what I'll do is I'll keep layering. I then put another layer of lemon and another layer of rosemary and another layer of pine. And I would just keep doing that until the jar is filled. And I just use this. I use it medicinally if I'm feeling like I have a sore throat. Like I usually, especially after the Common Ground Fair, I usually lose my voice often because I'm talking for 3 to 4 days straight. So I always have some of this on hand, but I love to take it throughout the winter as well when my throat starts to feel dry. So hot toddies, yeah.
So how do you store that? Do you after you make it, do you put it in the fridge or do you put it in the cupboard with a lid?
Yeah, I do a little bit of both actually. If I'm not going to take it right away, I will put it in the fridge after it's been sitting out. But I will also sometimes just leave it by the stove and use it. And you can strain it. If I have like things like lemon in it, I would either put it in the fridge or I would strain it out. So I do kind of a both depending on what is in it and how I'm using it.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah. So ginger elderberry hot toddy. So again, being playful with herbs in ways that we, to incorporate into our lives. The wintertime is such a great time for drinking things and especially hot toddies. And our hot toddies can be medicinal. And so I like to make this one with elderberries and ginger and cinnamon. And if you have reishi on hand, I know that there's a lot of, I can't think if I ever found reishi on the islands, but I do know that there's medicinal mushrooms that grow on the islands. But you can have it with mushroom or not. Chaga is one that is prevalent on the islands, and I was going to talk about that a little bit later. But if you have access to reishi, cool. If you don't worry about it. Use what you have. Reishi is a mushroom. It's a mushroom that grows on hemlocks, and primarily hemlocks around in here in Maine. And it's kind of a beautiful and cool mushroom if you've never seen it. It grows, it's the only shelf mushroom or polypore that grows on a stem. So most of the mushrooms that you see grow right onto the tree and are flat, but this has like a little stem that comes off of the tree, and then you see the flat mushroom. So it's a really cool mushroom. And it's great for the immune system, and it's a great one for the respiratory system. But so with this hot toddy blend, if you have access to elderberries and cinnamon and ginger and lemon, you're good to go. And so I tend to, I'm trying to think, 4 cups of water. So I'll take 4 cups of water, and then I tend to be heavy on the ginger. So I would do 2 tablespoons of ginger, and I would take 2 tablespoons of dried elderberries, or if you have frozen elderberries, that works just as well. You could substitute the frozen for the dry. I get a lot of cinnamon chips for work. So I have access to a lot of cinnamon chips, but if you don't have cinnamon chips, 1 or 2 sticks of cinnamon go really well in this. So I would put all that into the pot, and the lemon zest. Lemon zest is key. Lemon zest is magic. It's the best. So I would zest about a whole lemon into this as well. And I would let this simmer I would let it simmer till it decocts, or essentially reduces in half. So you start off with 4 cups and you're going to reduce it down to 2 cups. And then you can strain it, and you can add maple syrup, or if you have elderberry syrup and you make your own elderberry syrup, you can add that to it. And I also like to put some lemon juice in it just to brighten it. Then the option is if you want to put brandy in it. I just had a cousin who made it with bourbon, and they loved it with bourbon. I made this with elderflower brandy because elderflower brandy is delicious. And that's essentially just when the elderflowers are out, you would harvest the elderflowers and put them into a jam jar, and then cover that with brandy and just let it do its thing. And by the time winter comes around, you forget about it and remember it, and you're like, oh, this is so good. So goes really well with this, or, brandy, bourbon, or not. It's a tasty drink that you can drink all throughout. And I like to I just usually make this on my wood stove. I'll just have this going, I'll start it a little earlier, and then, maybe if I go out to Stackwood or something, I'll come in and it's ready to go. So however you want to utilize it, but it's a really great, tasty recipe. And elderberries, we didn't really talk about elderberries. Elderberries grow here. I'm sure there's a lot on the island. It's a plant that you can get the dried elderberries at most of the co-ops locally. And it's a wonderful anti-inflammatory. I love it for its anti-inflammatory effects. I also love it for its immune properties and immune supporting and stimulating properties. It's a real immune booster, but it's not overly stimulating. So it doesn't like doesn't put your immune system into hyperdrive, but it really can hold and support your immune system. So I love elderberries for this time of year for so many reasons. And I can't say enough about elderberries. And it's a sweet, tasty flavor. I'm a big fan personally. So this is a delicious drink. And then here's a syrup. Here's an elderberry syrup. So elderberries make a delicious syrup. It's a really great way of utilizing elderberries. And so for this syrup, I use 4 cups of water, and I'm taking 2 cups of dried elderberries, the cinnamon. If you don't have cinnamon chips, use the cinnamon sticks. You can use fresh or dried ginger. There is a difference between the two medicinally. If dried ginger is going to be more warming and more drying and more stimulating. The general effects of them are a bit different. So something to keep in mind is if you want something that's a little bit more warming and drying and a bit more of a punch, go dry ginger. If you want something a little bit more juicy and flavorful, I would use the fresh ginger. And you're still getting great benefits from the fresh ginger. You're still getting its anti-inflammatory properties either way. So it's all about like what you're trying to achieve. Astragalus root, again, optional if you have access to it or not. It's not a plant that grows readily here. We can grow it here in Maine. It's part of the pea family, but it grows a lot. It's a Chinese herb. But it's a wonderful herb for the immune system and for the upper respiratory system. It's great for people that are trying to gain back health, if that makes sense. If they've been knocked down and they're trying to recover, astragalus root can be a very nourishing plant, but wonderful for upper respiratory. So again, it can be optional if you have it. So what you're going to do is you're going to take all these herbs and you're going to put them with your 4 cups of water. And again, you're going to simmer these until you reduce it in half. And again, that's called a decoction in herbal medicine. You're starting off with something and you're reducing it. And it's a reduction in cooking. Same thing. The reasons why we do decocting, we do decocting with certain plants, but we don't do it with all plants. We do it primarily with roots and berries and twigs, because they need more time to open up and break down. They need that time to simmer and soften and get that access to the medicinal properties. Where when we use leaves and flowers, like flowers tend to be more of a tea, and we only steep them for a shorter amount of time because that's all that they need. And leaves, we would do what's called an infusion. An infusion is when you take a water, like you take, like I do it in quart jars. And so I'll put my herbs into the quart jar, and then I'll take hot water and fill the quart jar. And then I let it sit for an hour to even overnight. And again, this allows the medicine and the medicinal properties to extract into the water. But with the roots and the berries and twigs, they need more. They need more agitation, and they need to be able to break down more. So they need that heat, and they need to cook a little bit. So that's why you see a lot more of berries and roots in forms of like syrups. You can add things like lemon balm, but yeah.
What about using like a pressure cooker to help infuse herbs? And I've never done that before, but I would think that would be effective in
yes,
making the benefits available.
Sure, it's a good question, and it's one that I don't know how to answer.
Oh, that's okay.
I don't work with pressure cookers at all. So, but I like what you're saying, and it does make sense. And I wouldn't be surprised if it is a way that you could work with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna ask around. I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you're gonna simmer this down, and then once it's reduced, you're going to then add. And I have like a huge variation in the cups of honey and or maple syrup and or sugar. I mean, traditionally syrups are used with sugar, but again, we're talking about our immune system here, and you don't want to hit it with a bunch of white sugar. And what syrups used to be, they used to be like a 2-to-1. So you'd have like 2 cups to sugar of white sugar and 1 cup of your syrup concentrate. That is a ton of sugar. And the reason why these recipes were made that way was because people didn't have refrigeration. We have refrigeration now. We don't need to pack all that sugar into our syrups. You can just use a smaller amount and throw that sucker in the refrigerator. And so that's what I do. I use much less sugar in my syrups, and I use often maple syrup. And I will say maple syrup to me is like the secret sweetener when it comes to working with elderberries and these like cinnamon. It just tastes so good, that maple syrup. So you can use like a 1/2 cup to 2 cups, like your preference. And then again, your preference on whether you want to put alcohol in it or not. Again, it will preserve it longer, but if you're using a refrigerator, you don't need the alcohol. But vodka works well. Again, I really personally love brandy though, because the brandy flavors are tasty. And if you had made like an elderflower brandy earlier in the season, that would work well too. Sorry, my dog is having an absolute meltdown. It's been interesting having a puppy. I need you to come in here. I was curious how this would work out, and now I'm seeing how it's going. Thanks for all your patience. All right, so chai. This is delicious. This is super delicious, and this is a great way of working with, again, spices that we have in our kitchen, things that you just have access to, and it's delicious if you like these spices. I'm a big fan. Now, chaga is one. It's a mushroom. It's a medicinal mushroom. It grows on the islands. It typically grows on birch trees. And the thing about chaga that, I think not a lot of people realize and take into consideration is that chaga, unlike a lot of our other medicinal mushrooms, is not one that generates and regenerates quickly. And there's been this like huge like chaga craze where people are like, if I could count how many times people ask me, do you want some chaga? Do you want some chaga? People are just heading out into the forest and grabbing chaga without knowing what to do with it or knowing how to harvest it. So something to really take into consideration, if you come across some chaga, you don't need a lot of it. A small amount can really go a long way. If you cut that entire thing off and you cut into the tree, it will not come back. That is it. It's done. And it takes a long time for it to go from this size to the size that makes it visible enough for you to see. So really think about, like, if you hear of people that have chaga, maybe try to get some from them. Or if you come across some in the woods, take note of it and maybe take a small amount that will last you for the season. It's also a challenging one to process because it's so hard. It's a hard one to process. So I used to put it into, I buy it ground up at this point, but I would put it into a pillowcase and just get a hammer and just like smash it. Is a really just great way. But, there's a reason why people are all over chaga. It's because it's really beneficial. And so it's great. It's a great immune regulator, which means it doesn't overstimulate the immune system. So for people that have autoimmune issues, this is a good one. Most medicinal mushrooms are immune regulators, so they don't overstimulate the immune system. It's anti-inflammatory and antiviral. So again, astragalus. So I put astragalus in this. This is another great lung tonic. It's nutritive. Ginger. Ashwagandha isn't one that I really have talked about yet, but it's an Ayurvedic plant. It's a plant that can grow here in Maine, but it is native to India. It's a perennial in India, but it's an annual here in Maine, but we can grow it and get pretty sizable roots. The roots are what are used. And it's another wonderful immune regulator. If you have thyroid issues though, I would avoid using ashwagandha. Star anise, cardamom pods, cloves. These are spices that we use in cooking all the time, but do we ever stop to think about what could it be doing for us medicinally? And it's fabulous what they can be doing. The star anise is soothing. It's a demulcent again, so it means that it's very soothing to our tissue, to our respiratory tissue. So again, if you have that dry, irritated throat, the demulcent plants will help with that. But it can also help reduce phlegm and congestion. So it kind of does both, which is fantastic. Cardamom pods are great for sore throats, the damp cough. So it's great as an expectorant as well as being an antibacterial. And cloves also good for sore throats and an antibacterial. So really fun things with just our regular baking spices. So I put all these things together, and it doesn't look like I tell you how much water to put in, but 3 cups of water. So I measure all this out. And again, just use what you have. If you don't have the chaga, astragalus, ashwagandha, that's fine. Just making it with the ginger, cardamom, cinnamon, and cloves is going to be beneficial. If you like black tea, I can't do caffeine, so that's why there's no actual black tea in this. But if you drink black tea, mix these herbs with it, and then and drink it that way. And then optional is obviously traditional chai has some sort of dairy or dairy-free alternative and honey. I tend to not drink it that way, but go for it if your body can tolerate it. So another way to use foods and herbs is with broths and soups. I love soup. This is a great time of year. We're having a snow day, and what better way than to have some stock on the stove going. So, oh God. So I love soups. One of the things it's really nourishing for us to, for our systems. It's easy for our digestive system too. It's easy for our digestive systems, and you can put so many things in it. And with the soup stocks, it's endless. I really find soup stocks to be the dream way of working with plants, especially water-based plants, if that makes sense. So going back to these decoctions that we're making or infusions, we're doing this with herbs that, we're doing it with plants and herbs that will give over their medicine to the water, if that makes sense. Whereas some plants need alcohol to extract that medicine, or they need vinegar. That's all called different solvents. So these plants are all plants that are water-based medicines and work really well with giving over their medicine to water. So some of the things that I like to use in my soup stocks are astragalus root and Cotinopsis root. These are 2 Chinese plants. You could find them. I'm trying to think. I think you can find astragalus root at most of the natural food stores around here. Cotinopsis root might be a little bit more challenging, but you still might be able to find it at the Belfast Co-op. Burdock root is an incredible one. We don't think of burdock root as an immune product, but it is an incredible one for the immune system. I like it for the lymphatic system as well, and digestive system, along with our livers, which are really important. Nettles and alfalfa, there's nettles that grow out on the islands. Nettles, stinging nettles are such a nutrient dense plant. It's one of my favorite plants for feeding and nourishing my body. So it's a really good one to add into your soup stocks. Alfalfa, kelp, whatever you have, and again, the thyme that we talked about, oregano, ginger, garlic, onions. And then there's medicinal mushrooms. This is my partner, Gus, and this is a maitake that he found that was 40-something pounds. It was such an amazing find. So these grow here in Maine. They're a delicious edible mushroom. I know that they grow out on the island as well. And this is great. Mushrooms are a little bit more hard to find, but now that there's a lot of companies now that are growing mushrooms, and you can find mushrooms in a lot more places, and people are selling mushroom kits for growing. So this is a great one to grow, where you can eat it and you can use it medicinally. You could dry it. Lion's mane and shiitake are two others that you could grow on these mushroom blocks, and you can add to your meals, or again, dry them and use them in other ways. I like to use mushrooms always in my soup stocks. If I have something on hand, I'm throwing it into my soup stock. And most of these mushrooms, I'm not going to go into detail about them because they all have their incredible properties, but across the board, mushrooms in general are supportive to our immune system and our nervous systems. So throwing some mushrooms in there are going to be, you're going to benefit from it. So then what I like to do is I make a huge pot of bone broth, or and bones are another great one. I haven't mentioned bones, but if you eat meat, bones, adding bones to your broth is amazing. So nutritious. So I'll make a big pot of stock, and then I will either make it into a soup, or I will put it into ice cube trays and freeze it for later. This is a great thing to have on hand all winter long. And what you can do with those is you can like add that to some rice that you're making, or oatmeal, or you can add it to you can make like a miso. If you have miso, you can take one of those cubes and warm it up and then add miso to it and make a miso soup. You can kind of use it, you can use it for deglazing plants. There's so many ways of using it, or you can just sip on it with a tea, or add it to a tea. So those are some things. And like, right, I'll add like cinnamon to it if I want to sweeten it and make it more of like something sweet. You can add cinnamon to it. I'm a huge fan of cinnamon. Another thing about cinnamon that I haven't mentioned is cinnamon is wonderful for our circulation. It is really great for peripheral circulation. So for especially this time of year where we're outside and we're cold and our hands are getting cold and our feet are getting cold, cinnamon is really helpful for getting circulation to our extremities. So I love cinnamon for its flavor, but also it's a great medicinal in that way. And I came out with a book. Some of these recipes that we've talked about today came directly from this book. Some of them I'm just sharing because it's fun to do. But if you're interested in the book and more recipes similar to this, you can go to our website and find the book there. Or if you want a Kindle version, Amazon is selling the Kindle version of the book. And then, ways to stay in touch. Thank you so much for everybody for joining me, and sign up for our newsletter. Our newsletter can be found again at our website, which is just herbalrev.com. And just to give you guys some extra love, if you want to do any shopping on the website, use the code ISLANDLOVE and you'll get 15% off. Does anyone have any questions?
I do.
Yay.
So I just want to say, as an animal lover, I really love that you're incorporating animals into this presentation, because fur friends are a part of therapy. And I feel like we don't know as much, or I don't know as much about herbal medicine remedies for pets, but I would love to have a series on that as well. I would love to find out about herbal remedies for pets. Yeah. And I am really intrigued, and I want to learn more, Kathi. I think the presentation's been really awesome, and it's just making me think that I'm doing some things really well, but I've got growing to do, and that's a good thing to be reminded of. And it's really uplifting to see these pretty pictures during a snowy day as well, even though it's beautiful out and the snow actually feels really good. But I want to give others a chance to talk, because I see there's other people on. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yes. Thank you, Sarah. Yes, and thank you also, Kathi. This has been a wonderful presentation, and as Sarah said, I feel like a lot of what you're suggesting, how to use herbs and garlic especially, I do, and I feel like I'm pretty healthy, and I guess I can attribute some of my good health to the use of these herbs and plants. And I'm very intrigued about this Codenopsis because I am not at all familiar with it.
It's a really beautiful plant. It's a plant that we can grow here. I do grow it. It's a plant that it's from China. It grows in China, and I think it grows in higher altitudes. But I have been able to grow it here. It's a vine, and it creates these beautiful bell-like shaped flowers. They're just beautiful. And you don't harvest the root. The root is the medicine of it, and you don't harvest it until about the 7th or 8th year. So it's one for the long haul. I have had teachers that feel that, you know, when we grow medicine from other countries here, we're shifting the dynamics of like the environment, and like there is the question of like medicinally, are they the same powerful medicine as where they're natively grown? But that being said, I think that there still is plenty of medicinal properties, but I think that there is sometimes a bit of a question of strength, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing I wanted to mention, in your book, you mentioned how you don't recommend necessarily going out and foraging for a lot of these plants. And, you know, I think most people think, oh, foraging is about as pure as you can get of, you know, of the medicinal qualities of a plant. And you did touch on that a little bit with the chaga, but I think that's a really important, you know, idea to underscore. And maybe you want to, you know, expand on that, why you don't suggest doing that.
Yeah, it's like this tough thing, you know. I mean, I used to forage on the island all the time. It was my favorite thing to do. And I actually would just sometimes still go out to the island just to go to special places that I've been going to for so many years, just to go harvest some special plants. And I actually still do that, but on a very personal, small level. And it's because I have been doing it for so many years. What I have found over what's fascinating and interesting, right, is that there's all these different, how do I say this? When I started learning herbs, I was learning it from a person, and I was being taught in person. I was learning the plant. You know, we didn't have computers. I mean, we did, but we didn't have this kind of technology, which is amazing. And it's made sharing information so fantastic. But there's something to be said about there's certain things you've got to really learn in the person, in the moment, out in the field, if that makes sense. And when it comes to foraging, that's one of them. And I think a lot of people are learning things online and then just running off and just grabbing whatever. You know, I don't think that there's the same sort of process. And so I've been seeing that over and over again. And what we're seeing is obviously over harvesting because people haven't been taught how to harvest properly. There's the potential of pollutants. Some of these herbs, if they're growing in spaces that are unhealthy, the land might not, like the land might be polluted, or it might be in a urban area where there's more toxins. Those plants are absorbing those toxins. And so again, then people are ingesting that. So it's one of those things that I really ask people to stop and really think about their skill set with it, you know, and to really be present. Like, do you have the education and the skills to be harvesting? And if you don't, to really just hold off and go and get those skills if it's something that's interesting, because it is a magical way of working with plants. I have special spots all over this entire state that I go to, but I don't always harvest them. And that's another thing too, when you work with plants, is having that relationship with the land and being able to like read the land and see what's going on and be like, there's not enough here, or, you know, there's just a lot to, in my opinion, wild harvesting. Because, you know, as a farmer and as an herbalist, I am a steward of the land, you know, and animals of the land. You know, Sarah, to your point about the animals, you know, I bring that up a lot with the business, even, is our connection with not just the land. As a farmer, it's my job to pay attention to what's going on in the environment, what's going on in my surroundings, and how can I keep helping, you know, do a better job at preserving things, and like watching the animals, you know, like, are we seeing the same songbirds coming back? What did the year look like with pollinators? What are the deer and turkey doing? What are my animals around the farm doing? And having just this sort of holistic approach. You know, I look at a holistic approach to treating my body. I do the same when it comes to the farm and my work with harvesting. It's like a holistic approach, if that makes sense.
Anybody else before we conclude?
I did have one more thing, unless someone else has one more comment. I was wondering, and Lauren, I don't know if you're still on the call, but Lauren Runyon Bareford and I can take my mask off again. Lauren Runyon Bareford and I had a discussion, I guess it was over a week ago, maybe been a couple weeks, about the benefits of old man's beard.
Yeah.
And we have so much on the island. So I was just wondering if you do anything with that with the Herbal Revolution.
I don't currently do anything with Usnea for Herbal Revolution, but that being said, you know, I used to make a tincture of it, and it is a bit of a process with Usnea. You need to heat it to make it. It's not like a straightforward process, but yes, I love that plant, you know, that working with it, and it's something that we're starting to make some shifts within Herbal Revolution. I'm starting to bring back a lot more tinctures, but more in a focused formulas. Like, we'll be coming out with some respiratory formulas, and Usnea is one that I do like for certain respiratory conditions. So not currently, but we may in the future.
Okay. And then I wondered if you might have a list, like, I'm actually starting a garden at my new house this summer, well, spring. Yeah. And I'm wondering if you might have a little list that you might want to share after the workshop is done today, of what you'd recommend as a basic first aid herbal planting. That would be really cool, because I have a lot from living and gardening on the Bonnet Farm for 10 years. I have a lot of gardening experience, and I definitely have a lot of herbology in my history with my family. My mother was very much an herbalist, but I don't have any of her. I have some innate secrets, but she passed away when I was young, so I don't really have her teaching now. Right. But I have it within me, and I'd like to develop it.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I can definitely shoot you an email with herbs, like some great herbs to get started with. Yeah.
Thank you.
So fun. Congratulations. I'm excited for you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I am too.
Awesome. Well, I guess I guess we'll conclude this. And again, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and your experiences with plants and the healing benefits of them. And congratulations again, and good luck.
Thanks.
And we hope to talk with you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I miss you all. I miss the island. So big hug and love to you all.
Yes.
And yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.